You're listening to The Rewatchables 1999 from Luminary Media. I'm your host, Bill Simmons. I'm with Chris Ryan, Mallory Rubin, and Sean Fennessy. Here we go. I do love you, and you know there is something very important we need to do as soon as possible.
What's that?
It's an Eyes Wide Shut Rewatchables 1999 podcast right now.
What's the big mystery?
Bill, I have seen one or two things in my life. Never anything like this.
You know there's no way on earth that you're going to leave here tonight without taking me with you.
Baby did a bad, bad thing. Baby did a bad, bad thing. Baby did a bad, bad thing. Baby did a bad, bad thing.
Chris Ryan is here. Sean Fennessy and Mallory Rubin in costume.
Bill Simmons?
You can take the mask off now, Mallory.
Jesus
You committed to the bit.
Please
Wow.
take the mask off.
How did they do it
Really
in the
hard
movie?
to breathe in these, let alone.
It's a
perform oral
Mindhunter
sex, I
mask.
don't-
It's not meant to be for
great.
eyes wide shut.
Well, Mallory overheated. It's not going to be the only time in this podcast.
Now I have an excuse.
The IMDb synopsis of this movie is a New York City doctor embarks on a harrowing night-long odyssey of sexual and moral discovery after his wife reveals a painful secret to him.
I'll say.
You good with that, Chris?
Do you think they should have named this movie Chase the Night?
Chase the Night.
ChaseTheNight.com.
Directed by World Wide West. I watched this morning, and it was a weird start to the morning. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
weird movie. I can't believe we're doing a rewatchables about it, but I also feel like we're doing 15 1999 movies for this podcast series, and I don't know how this isn't one of them, Sean Fennessy.
Well, it's a great opportunity to talk about one of the greatest directors ever, one of the greatest movie stars ever, one of the greatest actresses ever, one of the greatest on-screen couples ever.
And one of the weirdest movies ever.
Then a great opportunity to make me uncomfortable.
And marriage.
Mallory, it's impossible to make you
Things.
uncomfortable. Did
I
this
feel
movie make
great.
you uncomfortable?
No, this movie delights me from start to finish. In nearly every respect, it is scintillating, it is titillating, it is provoking physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. I love it.
Chris Ryan, did you watch this with your wife this week?
I did not. We realized that she and I were talking last night. We realized we've never watched it as a couple.
Good idea.
Oh, I enjoyed watching this with my husband.
Really?
Did he enjoy watching
How
it
did
with
the
you?
after show go?
Yeah.
Talk the marriage.
Talk to marriage.
It was great. You know, we discussed filmmaking. We discussed
Mhm.
Tom Cruise.
Hmm.
We discussed the outline for this podcast and the categories for this podcast, and then the things that we left undiscussed, unspoken. Really, the questions that the movie explores. You know, and I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
There was an HBO series called Tell Me You Love Me that I
Oh,
think only
yeah.
lasted a year.
I remember that.
And that was the same kind of thing where it's like your relationship had to be in pretty good standing as you watch this, or else you start side eyeing whoever you're with.
Do you
going,
enjoy this movie?
I think it's so fucking weird and so out there. And so every time I watch it, I pick up new things, and it's online. I mean, not online, it's on cable a lot, which I think is weird in itself because
Yes.
it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. And I don't
That's why it's weird.
I don't know who's no, but I don't know who's on Cinemax in 2019 going, hey, Eyes Wide Shut, I'll dive in. And yet there I am. diving
Honestly,
in.
I've done it a bunch.
Yeah.
I've seen it a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
For that exact
but
reason.
that must be why they're showing it, because people like
People
us are
watch it.
like, ah,
Well,
all
I
right.
mean, there's like some very obvious reasons. It's like Nicole Kidman's just taking her clothes off in this movie like 3 times. Like
Yeah.
for a certain kind of a person. And I'm not one of those people. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm interested in checking out what's going on here. And then also it's like a beautifully made, kind of weird, confusing movie that kind of sucks you in, even if it doesn't give you resolution.
It's also a great rabbit hole movie. So
Yeah.
if you do research on it, and if you read the Reddit threads and sort of the
Yes.
outer rim of websites, not beyond like the sort of like 10 things you need to know about this movie. It's like once you get into like the symbology of it and
The Rothschild family.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Get a little into the Venetian masks element.
Is the
The
outer
masonry.
rim? Is the outer rim one of the moves that we saw at the orgy, or is that?
I think that
something
orgy's
else?
pretty chaste.
It is very tame. It's
Yeah.
too tame,
Oh,
actually.
I had that for nitpicks.
Yeah, we'll get
I
there.
really wanted an orgy. If we're gonna go there, let's go.
Absolutely.
You should check out
What's-
Caligula. I feel like you can get what you need
That's
there.
what I needed. I needed from this movie. This was a tame orgy.
Yeah.
It was an orgy that you have when you don't want an NC-17.
That's right.
You know, a lot of people kind of writhing on each other, but so this was based on the 1926 novella Tromneville
One of your faves.
Mhm.
by
Dream
the
story.
great Arthur Schnitzler.
Hmm.
Arthur Schnitzler.
Schnitzler.
Yeah.
Schnitzler. And our friend Stanley became obsessed with it, and he obtained the rights in the 1960s, and this ended up being his last movie. It's in a lot of ways a greatest hits of Kubrick movies.
That's an interesting way to think about
Right?
it. Yeah. He is using a lot of his moves and a lot of the themes that he's interested in.
I definitely don't think it's his best movie by
No,
any stretch,
no.
but I do think it's a testament to what he was a particular genius at, which is taking all of the things that are just sort of practical elements of filmmaking, like the costume design and the set design and which actors you choose and how the camera moves and how it's lit. And it's a lot of people look at that as just sort of like logistics or just sort of like, hey, we got to figure out the cop wears this suit, right? Every single thing in this movie is part of his color palette. And that's why he's who he is because he can see the entire movie in 5 dimensions in his head all the time. And maybe it takes him 400 days to get there,
yeah.
but he can actually say like, yeah, the Christmas lights are going to be all through the movie. And then like, it's always going to feel like this. And I'm going to shoot it like this. And you never see Tom Cruise like that. And every little thing, it winds up, it's a true expression of filmmaking, I think.
It's kind of in your wheelhouse, Mel. You like things that are left open to interpretation.
It's true. I love to be able to question intent, whether something is actually the finished product, the film that he would have made, because of course he died
Yeah.
before it came out, which is also a huge part of the film's legacy. But I love the Christmas lights point
Mhm.
because, you know, in the novella, which I've not read, in the interest of full disclosure,
It's
and
the
I
one
think,
Schnitzler
I think
you
the
haven't
interest of
hit.
full disclosure is sort of the point here.
We tried to hire Schnitzler.
Yeah.
Jewish
couldn't get it.
protagonist.
Huge asking price.
Yeah.
Huge ass
Yeah.
price.
Schnitzel,
He wa-
yeah.
His price tag was massive.
did not want to read NBA at all.
Yeah.
What a tape head, though.
Yeah.
Wait, I
Schnitzler
drifted Bell.
But he was-
loves,
Focusing on the carnival scene in Vienna.
loves
Yeah.
crushing tape.
But
Yeah.
he likes to spend NBA free agency focusing on his fiction,
And
you
we're
know,
like-
his erotic fiction.
It's
So
weird. Some
doesn't?
weird pitches from him. Schnitzler.
one of the great it was Schnitzler or KOC.
Yeah.
And we went KOC.
I
Congratulations,
interrupted
Kev.
you. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. I've
I
done
really
it to all of you
apologize.
before.
I apologize.
It's fine. I think this is going to be a free flowing conversation.
Yeah, I said to Sean we might throw the categories out. I don't know how if this can be treated like.
I think
Top
it's
Gun.
hard to say things like most rewatchable scene.
Yeah. I do think that like,
I've got some nominees.
but I have thought a lot about heat checks as I have thought about this movie. So there are maybe some opportunities for us to return to the structure. But I think you're right that flowing freely is a good strategy.
I gotta say, I'm shocked that I like this movie because, as you guys know, I hated English majors in college, and I hated books that could be interpreted by however. I like my things to have like angles and answers, and I was just never one of those guys who would consume content and be like, "Here's how I see it," and go to a coffee shop and argue
Yeah,
about
but
it for 2
isn't
hours.
the reason you like this movie because the protagonist isn't like Jesse or whatever from Reality Bites or Troy from Reality Bites? Like it is just a normal guy who gets thrown into this crazy
I don't know.
world.
I got to be honest. I don't know why I like this movie other than I've just never seen another movie like it. It's so fucking weird. And it was able to take this Kidman Cruz relationship that was happening in real life at the time
Mm-hmm.
and twist it. This relationship that we all already had kind of questions about because he was deep into Scientology at this point. It was very secretive in general. And then when they filmed this movie, it was super secretive and nobody even knew what the plot was. And
Mhm.
they kept everything under wrap and there was confidentiality agreements. And by the time this movie came out in 1999, it was like what's this going to be? Are they just going to be having sex for 3 hours? Like nobody knew anything.
But I think that the reason why this movie is compelling to a lot of different kinds of people who like a lot of different kinds of movies is the same reason that almost every Kubrick movie is that way, which is that if you watch his movies just on the surface, if you just watch The Shining on the surface, or even A Clockwork Orange, which is a crazy movie, but if you just watch it to follow the characters and see where the story goes, it can be satisfying in its own way. Like on the surface,
even the opening of 2001 has a story.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, the whole Hal, showdown is a science fiction
I'm
story.
even talking about the apes, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and likewise, this movie is an erotic thriller and a mystery.
It's an erotic thriller that's not really that erotic and has no thrills.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it. Like there's
And-
really not a lot of sex and there's not a lot of thrills.
I'll tell you what I really loved about it this last time around watching it that I don't know that I had noticed before is great New York movie. I know it was shot in London, but
Yeah.
it's not New York like an actual representation of the way New York looks, but it is how New York feels. And that idea that like the night gets longer and longer there and that you can like get dragged into a weird bar, you know, or you can, and when you walk into someone's apartment
Or
and
a
on the
weird
outside
ritual
it looks
sex orgy.
like one thing, and then you walk into an apartment building and then like it's a completely different world. Like that is what it feels like to live there, especially if you're out like after 1 a.m.
The way that Kubrick built New York for the movie is just another mask, right? It fills that same function that the actual masks do at the orgy. And like you're saying about the character who is this ultimately this blank that allows you to either project yourself or avoid projecting yourself onto the character. Like all of the different aspects of the film serve that same function. It's all a facade. Do you want to show somebody else who you really are? Do you even want to acknowledge it to yourself? And then what happens when you finally do?
I think it's also
There's that English major stuff Bill doesn't
that was
like.
good.
There-
No, I'm with you on this one.
even in a more practical way, though. I think that the way everything looks and feels is the way everything is meant to look and feel in a dream. And so when you dream about New York, you don't dream about it in Technicolor.
Right.
It's like your vision of it, but it's not quite accurate. It's not pitch perfect. There's something a little off. There's something a little off about everything going on. The tonality, the way people are talking to each other, the things that happen. And even if you don't subscribe to the theory that it's all a dream, there's something purposeful going on.
And
there.
every woman wants to have sex with Tom Cruise during the dream, which is the key
Exactly.
element to it. No?
I guess.
No, I'm saying in the dream, not you right now.
Yeah.
He's just on a street corner and some lady's like, hey, want to come upstairs? And like,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen in real
I think
life.
there's an interesting discussion to be had about which of the characters are actually hypersexualized in the movie and which of them really aren't. But to that point about the dreamlike state, and to your earlier point about Christmas, that's the brilliance of the way Christmas is positioned in the film. Because, and again, the protagonist in the novella, as I understand it, is a Jewish protagonist. Christmas does not play a role in the Jewish Vienna in the story. But what is Christmas? It's a unifying force for a lot of people, right? It's something that brings people together, not something that divides them. And then it's basically the perfect stand-in for just what you would consider everyday life. Normalcy, routine. It's this thing that you can count on.
Yeah, it's like when Alice is like, Helen is waking up and she expects us to take her shopping.
Exactly. And then
Despite your
everything,
night. Yeah.
all of this strangeness, all of this oddity, all of these shifts and changes play against that backdrop of the totally routine.
But what straight guy doesn't think of being told that a beautiful woman wants to have sex with them is something different from Christmas? That's Christmas for a lot of straight
Sure.
guys. Like that.
and
that's
ritualistic sex orgies.
Yes.
It's
Those
also
are all
a great,
gifts.
It's a great, I remember this like, there's a couple experiences I had in New York, but I remember once, it was actually something that's almost like deja vu, but I remember I was driving back, I was in a cab going across the Manhattan Bridge, no, the Brooklyn Bridge, because I was going past like up Atlantic on the Brooklyn Bridge. And as I was driving home in this car, I saw out of the backseat window, one guy walking down the street and completely knocked out this other guy on Atlantic Avenue. And I was like, did you see that? Like I was in the car with, I think my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, did you see that? And they were like, no. And I asked the driver and he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's that feeling that like you can get sometimes in New York because you're always moving, you're always on subways, you're always in cabs, you're always walking really fast. It's like, wait, did that just happen?
Right.
Did I just see that? And that's the kind of whole thing of this movie is that there's this unseen world right in front of Bill that he gets this one little glimpse of and then is told like he can never have again. And that's like the most fascinating thing in this. The whole thing is his interaction with that.
Where do you stand on the conspiracy corners with this movie? We should probably talk about it now.
Let it
This
rip.
is
Go
the
for
most
it.
widely interpreted
Yeah.
weird movie probably ever. And this is something he's loved to do over the years. I mean, I saw The Shining. That was one of my favorite movies of the rewatchables of the 80s.
Mhm.
Scared the living shit out of me in the theater. My dad shouldn't have taken me, but
I'd really like to do that as a rewatchables at some point.
we have to. But had no idea until the internet was formed that there was this whole subculture of The Shining and people breaking down Danny's clothing and what it meant and things in the background. And I didn't know about any of that stuff until I started reading film books, which was probably late 80s, early 90s.
Because that kind of scholarship was like existed pretty much in a vacuum. Like it wasn't.
It had to be your
widely-
buddy
It was
who
Yeah,
lived-
super
it was in
widely
video
circulated.
stores.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
And then he became famous for it. And I think by the time this movie was made, it was kind of one of his things. Now, it might have always been his thing, but he really tries to own it in this movie.
Mhm.
And you can look at all kinds of shit going on here. Now, 20 years later, it could be a parable for what's happened with this Jeffrey Epstein story.
Yep.
And people have said from the beginning, this is what he was trying to tell us, even though he used adult women in the sex orgy, that those women were the proxies for actual like teenagers. And this was all about ritualistic pedophilia. Who knows if that's true, but that's the kind of discourse that people have about this movie.
Well, and then you have the whole plot line in the rainbow costume shop with Milch's daughter, and that's a child,
Yeah.
right? That's a
She's
teenager.
15 when she
Yeah.
films that. Yeah. So you have that.
I mean, neither of those things are a mistake. They're very purposeful. Like
Yeah.
I don't even think that's such a high level conspiracy about the movie. There's a lot of conspiracies about what the colors mean in the movie, and there's a lot of like film theory around the movie, but shooting in the Rothschild's mansion, the way
So
that they
that's another
did,
thing, yeah.
like
But
there-
the same way that we like, you're saying that like The Shining and like the understandings or the readings of The Shining like weren't really around until like you started reading film books and especially with the internet, and you can just kind of like Google Shining, meaning of The Shining or meaning of Eyes Wide
Mhm.
Shut.
Documentaries.
Our
about it.
understanding of that kind of like underworld was way out like on the far reaches and is only like I think recently pierced the mainstream. I remember when we were talking about True Detective season 3 and there's a lot of that stuff in there, and you start reading about it and you're like, wow, this stuff was like on the news once, but then never like came up again really. And then like it was like on a current affair a couple of times, but then it really came up again. It's really, I feel like it's only recently that people have just been like, well, I guess this is really it. And the Post and the Times and everybody is like really reckoning with it.
I don't go to any Reddit boards at all, except for the Reddit conspiracy thing, which is one of my favorite bookmarks.
That's
And
such a healthy way to
Kubrick-
interact. Yeah.
I love seeing what the crazies are getting fired up about. And Kubrick is on there every once in a while.
oh yeah.
And when this Epstein thing started, there were a lot of people on that board who were like,
Mhm.
yes, I've been saying this forever. And then Eyes Wide Shut is coming back
Yeah.
as threads and stuff. But there is a segment out there that's like, this has been happening forever. And now it's hitting the mainstream and they're trying to cover it up. And this goes as deep as it goes. And it's kind of hard to argue when this guy had a fucking island with cameras and
Yep.
all kinds of weird paintings and stuff. And it's like really not that far away from Eyes Wide Shut. And when I watched it this time, I watched it in a completely different lens.
Absolutely.
Like I felt like Epstein could have been at that party.
Mhm.
Oh, without question. I mean, I think maybe we'll break down the scene towards the end of the movie where Victor and Bill have a conversation about what's really going on here, but that's an indicator that this is a centuries old ritual practice
Yeah.
that the elites are, it's basically an admission of the Freemasonic society. Like that is essentially what's at the really like not too far below the surface of what the point of the movie is. That's definitely a big part of it. And whether
Wasn't
that's
that the clue with the rainbow thing? Wasn't the
Yeah.
rainbow like a big
Mhm.
masonry?
yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I actually don't. I think that there's 3 levels of it, right? There's the one level that I mentioned, which is like you just watch the movie and it's entertaining and you like it. The second version is the film theory version where you think about Kubrick as a filmmaker and what he does with light and shadow and sound and music and the acting. And then what does that mean for the themes he's trying to send? And then the third level is what crazy conspiracy theories are there? Is it such a conspiracy theory that this movie is about how elite people prey on young women? Like that, that's not really that deep. Like what goes beyond that? What's the second layer of conspiracy theory here? Because we know it's been proven that the Epstein thing is real. Like that happened.
I guess the pedophilia angle with the actual Eyes Wide Shut party,
Right.
I hadn't considered until recently.
Right.
I just thought that was
Right.
like, oh, these rich dudes are just
It's like a
using women.
mishmash of
Yeah, it's
things.
just they're
Yeah.
just running through women, and when stuff
Right.
happened, they drug them up and
Right.
then they get rid of them.
And Victor says she's a hooker. He doesn't
Yeah.
say she's a child. And you couldn't
Right.
actually make a movie about pedophilia in the way that
You couldn't
Kubrick
have,
wanted to.
you couldn't have 100 naked 13-year-old girls in that thing. They're never making that movie. So who knows? It's a really fucked up movie. I can't believe we're doing a
It's
podcast
basically
about
what
it.
Ziegler says. It's like, what if I told you this was just a charade? Let's just believe that.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing with Eyes Wide Shut.
Well, the film's production was 400 days long. Apparently, this is the Guinness World Record for the longest continuous film shoot. I don't know if I believe that, but
It's a long time.
This movie that production was in the tabloids like every day. I remember reading the New York Post when I was working that summer before it came out, and it was chronicled so closely because it was Cruise and Kidman.
Right.
it was Cruise and Kidman, and also I feel like Cruise at the most famous he's ever been.
Mhm.
This is right after Jerry Maguire.
5 $100 million movies.
Yeah, he's had this 11-year run from Top Gun
Mhm.
through Jerry Maguire, and it's like, what's next? This guy can do anything. And then he just went off the map,
Mhm.
and he didn't really do anything for 2+ years. The Kidman thing she was kind of still going, her trajectory was still going up. She hadn't really been in a great movie to this point, had she?
I'm Dead Calm.
Right,
Big fan of
I
that
wouldn't call that a
movie.
great movie. I really like that movie,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
She
she wasn't a big
she
star.
hadn't worked with a director like this.
No.
I think she was.
Had
still,
she done any like Campion stuff in Australia? or-
I guess Portrait of a Lady is around that time.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically. I mean, we can quickly look at what she's doing in the late 90s.
But yeah, like every day,
Malice
and they're in
and-
London, and while they're shooting in London, the London tabloids are trying to get after it. So like he would try and shoot a little bit here and there, and there would just be huge hordes of people showing up to watch them shoot.
Mhm.
And then you had
There was a
Mission
lawsuit.
Impossible 2, which was supposed to be starting, and it keeps getting delayed. And then you have Harvey Keitel leaves,
Mhm.
and at some point, people are going, "What the hell is going on?" This is early internet. This is 97, 98. The internet still wasn't working the way it did now. A lot of this stuff was being reported in New York Magazine, Premiere Magazine. I remember reading a lot of it,
Yeah.
being like, "What the fuck's going on with this movie?"
It
Mhm.
seemed like it was going. There are signs that it's going towards like Heaven's Gate apocalypse now.
Yeah.
like all time
Right.
boondoggle. Are they going to take it away from him? But by all accounts, like Kubrick basically had this way of working that was he could work at such a low price point with the crew he
In
had,
London,
the size
yeah.
of the crew in London, that 400 days for Kubrick was like a pretty normal movies for like a Sidney Pollack.
He also did all post-production out of his house. So most movies, when they're made,
Mhm.
they're hiring outside companies. They're bringing in, lots of people paid at extraordinary rates, and it's happening in Santa Monica. He lived in London. They filmed in London. He did all of this stuff. He did all the post out of his own home. So that's a money saver. Plus, there's this great documentary called Film Worker about a man named Leon Vitali, who was basically Kubrick's right-hand man. It came out last year. And it is an evocation of how committed people were to working for him
Mhm.
for not a lot of money for years. Like Vitali worked for him for 3 decades, and he just turned his whole life over to Kubrick because he was like, I will never meet a more inspired and important artist. And what I want to do is be in service of that person, which is the same way that Cruise and Kidman are in the middle of this huge career that they're both having. They just turned over 2 years of their life to this guy to make this movie.
It's like all of us with Bill.
A little bit.
I
Here
was
we
thinking
are.
that.
You're the Epstein.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I was thinking that. I'm 2 more decades away from being your Kubrick.
Oh, God.
No, I do think it is funny. There's
Talk about
nobody-
Trom Novell,
But there's nobody like this now. When he
You're
died,
not allowed to be.
Yeah.
When he died, this was the end of something. I think Scorsese could have been like this if he had picked his projects better. But I think he's been a little
But
bit more high
Scorsese
volume.
had like a little bit
Yeah.
more up and down of being on the outs with the actual movie industry. Kubrick like centralized everything, like Sean's saying, and made himself his own film
made
industry.
it Enigma. Yeah.
Scorsese was like, I gotta make one that makes a little bit of money, so they let me make Kundun or something
That's
like
right.
that. Like, you know,
But
he-
that's my point, though. Like Scorsese could have made a movie every 5 years and built up a mystique about the next one. That was the one thing I always felt like Kubrick had, where it's like, oh, he's making a movie.
Mhm.
Ooh.
That's right.
What's it about? There's no director like Daniel Day-Lewis is the only person
Mhm.
of this generation I feel like
Tarantino's
who's
a
pulled
little
it
bit like
off.
that.
You think?
I mean, not
He's
maybe
been
not
every,
as like
3-4 years.
I don't think we unpack or try. We don't stay up all night trying to figure out what Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's about. But I think that he makes a movie every 3 or 4 years, and it's
people
an
throw
event.
themselves into it. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he made 13 movies in 50 years. Like that's not Scorsese works that way because he wants to make something new all the time. He's questing to build his filmography. Kubrick actually liked being inside one project for years at a time. He thought that was the best way to do it.
Well, he also is a lunatic. Like he really wanted to destroy his actors as he worked with them, which he gave Shelley Duvall a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
She had to go to the hospital and like recuperate from working with him, which is, I think, unparalleled. I have a special category just for this podcast before we get to the categories. Craziest Kubrick story from this movie.
Ooh.
He had Cruise do 95 takes of walking through a door.
Yeah.
He found his story through psychoanalyzing Cruise and Kidman and basically being their marriage counselor. And they all agreed, we'll never tell anyone else what
He
we
would give
talked
them
about.
separate notes, but not let them talk about what he
Right.
had said to them.
Not much of a counselor.
She filmed a scene where she did this scene with the male model and he filmed it for 6 days
The
and
naval
wouldn't let
officer.
her tell Cruise anything about it. So it was just, he wanted it just things
Cruise
to
got
fester with
fucking
them.
ulcers making this movie.
Yeah.
I'm getting ulcers hearing this.
He filmed the scene with your favorite scene with him and Sidney Pollack at the end. It took 3 weeks to film that scene and 200 takes. For the sex scenes, he researched Basic Instinct, Showgirls, and other erotic thrillers like Red Shoe Diaries to evaluate how far he could push the sexual
He
content.
researched Showgirls. I've done some researching on Showgirls myself.
He banned Cruise from the set during the handsome naval officer scene.
Mm-hmm.
The scene when Tom Cruise buys the New York Post
Mm-hmm.
and finds out the girl dies.
Mm-hmm. Different languages for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had an Italian newspaper and he's
Uh-huh.
like, hey, can you shoot some with the Italian
Yep.
newspaper for my Italian cut?
Mhm.
What a nut job. And then in the last scene, when he enters the apartment for the last time, Bill, right before he discovers the mask, we see a stack of Stanley Kubrick videos on the long table under the painting, and the one on the top is Full Metal Jacket from 1987.
Mhm.
What a fucking nut job. And I probably left out 10 things.
That's the thing, like talking about the 400 days through the lens of just time or money or other projects in the industry. Like none of that can even come close to touching thinking about that amount of time for the married couple making this movie
Mhm.
together. That is an astonishing thing that actually happened in real life.
Who were
and then they got
contracted-
divorced 2 years later.
And they were contracted for 6 months.
Right.
So they went 6 months
be
over
married?
their like, and it's not like Tom Cruise and good one. No, that was good. We should take a second.
That was really good.
Yeah. Good
That
So
stuff.
you meant contracted to be in the movie.
That was
I'm
like
sorry, I
the
got
face
confused.
you just made is like when Novak Djokovic aces someone and he's just like very deeply satisfied. I was saying like if you think about what it takes to get Tom Cruise to show up for anything, like
Yeah.
the things you have to do for that, or how valuable his time is, and they just took 6 extra months and held up Mission Impossible to do this.
And movie X.
But it's like you're right. You can't really compare that to any other filmmaker. There's
It's-
nobody today who's just like, I'm just taking Tom Cruise off the board for a year and a half.
And he's using against Cruise.
Right.
Cruise's love of I want to work with these directors over the next 15 in these actors over the next 15 years of my life. This guy, this guy, this guy, and then Kubrick's the right wheel.
He's like, you asked for this.
And
Yeah.
the thing that I'm going to tap into to make my movie is your most deep-seated, not only sexual appetites, but insecurities
Mm.
with your partner who's right there.
With a naval officer.
Smoking hot.
Taking him off the board for 2.5 years, which is what this does, is kind of an amazing thing.
I was going to get to
Yeah.
it later, but we should talk about it now because it's like the Durant Achilles injury.
yeah,
Where it's just like you take a year. This is Cruise's
Yeah.
absolute prime. And you're just taking a year and a half away from him. That's at least one movie. It might have been 2.
It's also like Born on the 4th of July in 89 basically changes his career because that's when he realizes he should make serious movies. Like The Color of Money is a great movie, but I don't think that it was thought of as like a serious movie. Born on the 4th of July is a serious movie. He's nominated for an Oscar. And then he basically works with Tony Scott. He works with Rob Reiner. He makes The Firm. He does Interview with the Vampire, Mission Impossible, Jerry Maguire.
But also works with Nicholson.
Right, he's
Paul
working with great
Newman.
actors.
Yeah, yeah.
He meets his wife. huge things are happening for him. Like Chris said, you get 5 $100 million movies in a row. He's not only the biggest movie star in the world, he's probably the biggest movie star of all time. Is that overstating it? I mean, he's really
He's in the conversation for sure.
in a strata that we've never seen before.
He was the avatar of a time period where the name above the title guaranteed a certain box office performance, regardless of what the movie was.
Right.
And they could use that Quan, they could use that for I want to work with Stanley Kubrick, or they could just be like, screw it, I want to just make like another dumb family
Would
comedy.
be Will Smith.
Yeah.
Just be like, let's make another Aliens movie.
The career that basically Cruise could have had is essentially the one that DiCaprio winds up having, where he never goes off and makes the action movie. He never goes off and makes the blockbuster. He's every time it's Scorsese, it's Iñárritu, it's Tarantino, it's whoever. It's the only thing he's interested in.
Well, the irony of pulling Cruise out of the loop for 2.5 years, this is like an amazing stretch for movies. 97, 98,
Yeah.
99. And, you know, this ended up being a weirdly memorable 1999 movie, but I kind of wish he had done one more.
And you
He's
should just
also
safely
Magnolia.
assume that any movie from that time period was offered to Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Every single movie that you see that is in any way a Hollywood movie was they at some point were like, could we get Tom Cruise for this? Could we get Tom Cruise?
Roger Ebert, 3.5 stars. He wrote, Kubrick's great achievement in this film is to find and hold an odd, unsettling, sometimes erotic tone for the Doctor Strange encounters. I feel like he kind of mailed that in. This movie made $162 million.
Yeah.
Mostly overseas.
That's right. Like 100 of that was overseas, right?
Let's just do the categories because I really feel like we can't talk about this movie for more than 90 minutes. I'm going to zoom through some of these. Most rewatchable scene.
Some great ones.
Don't you dare zoom. We're here
Okay,
for it,
all
man.
right.
The pot is making you aggressive, Bill.
Stone Kidman confronting Cruise.
Did you have that in your back pocket?
I did.
That was good. Stone Kidman, that would be the first one.
Do it.
She turns on him.
Are we going in chronological order?
Yeah.
Then we've skipped one.
Okay, what? Which one?
The dance.
Oh, with the weird Hungarian guy?
Yes.
Incredible.
Oh my
that guy
God.
is so your type, too,
Oh,
isn't it?
Oh my God.
Oh. That is
That's
that
true.
is a
That is
perfect
your
example
speed.
of,
Oh my
of the
God.
different though.
Holy shit.
I was watching that. I was just like, this guy is such a creep. Who's this fucking old?
I hate
That's
to
like
break it to you,
a
but I
few of
had
the
him for the Saul
sexiest-
Rubinek Award.
That's like
for
a few of the
worst over actor.
sexiest minutes in movie history.
Really? Oh my God.
Oh my
What?
God.
I'm stunned.
I love it.
I think that guy is bad.
Oh, I love it. It's not about him. It's about the way he makes her feel.
You know why women used to get married, don't you?
Why don't you tell me?
It was the only way they could lose their virginity and be free to do what they wanted with other men. The ones they really wanted.
I think that's my champagne. I know.
So
It definitely is.
this guy,
I'm certain.
I mean, this is a really important dude. First of all, this guy's name is Sky Dumont.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
SKY. Here are the names of his 4 wives.
4 wives?
Helga Liener,
Mm-hmm.
married 1972, divorced.
Mhm.
Diane Stolajan,
Mm-hmm.
married 1992, divorced 1995. Cosima von Borsodi, married 1995, divorced 2000. And Mirha Dumont.
Yeah. Guess what the name of wife number 5 is going to be, folks?
Mallory Rubano.
Still alive?
This guy he's alive.
Yeah.
This guy is just an absolute legend. He was born Cayetano Neven Dumont, and he changed his name to Sky in Argentina.
I love that.
What was he
scene.
doing in Argentina?
Well, he's German, so there are a great deal of Germans, obviously,
Playing a Hungarian,
emigrated
though.
to
Usually
Argentina.
for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
though.
True indeed.
All right, so we have that scene. We
The
have
sexual tension, a speech on marriage. It's wonderful. Continue.
Stone Kidman.
Maybe because you're the mother of my child, and I know you would never be unfaithful to me.
You are very sure of yourself, aren't you?
No. I'm sure of you.
Unbelievable.
An absolutely iconic scene.
One of my favorites. One of my
Just
favorites.
incredible.
Period. Like in movies. Really enjoy it. She's kind of bad.
Terrible.
She's like not high at all.
So
But
she's not even nominated for this
you
movie,
know,
which is
so
really hard.
Amy
with
Nicholson
that
wrote a
part.
really good piece for Vanity Fair about the
Yeah.
movie, but in general wrote a lot about
how bad the acting
bad
is.
versus right.
Yes.
That was the way she
Yes.
described the Tom Cruise performance. Is like, is it bad? Objectively, yes. Is it right for the movie? Also, yes. And
Yeah.
I think
True for her too.
you go through each scene and it goes through that cycle where you're like, man, this is really bad.
So Amy
Like, has
Nicholson,
Todd Field ever like walked outside before? And then you're all of a sudden you're like, this is perfect.
right. Her theory was that Cruise did so many takes that Kubrick might have intentionally used
Bad takes.
bad takes of his because that was the performance he wanted.
Mhm.
And then Cruise is trying to do 50 to 90 takes of every scene and has no idea what Kubrick's going to pick and no idea how to even shape the character, which seems like maybe that's what he wanted.
I think if he's trying to get dream logic, where everything is a little off kilter, a lot of times when you're watching the movie, you're like, what's wrong with these people? Why are they
Right, they're
talking that way?
sleepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kidman in that scene is like musical to me. Like I can hear security and commitment, like the way that she's,
Titties,
like everything that
dicky.
she's saying is so, it's like rhythmic and strange and very memorable. Frank Ocean very famously like sampled this whole speech in a song and
Yeah.
like played it under a song.
Because you really wouldn't want to.
If we ever get caught, it'll be a long day.
Because it's so iconic and
Also,
weird.
just the way that she does, like that whole scene is a perfect couple fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
Yes.
we're together
What's
and
going
it's
on
like
here?
80% right, but there's something weird, and then like you immediately smell blood in the water and you're like, we're gonna have a fight. And then you are like, wait, maybe we
Blood
don't
in
have
the water.
maybe we don't have to fight, so I'm gonna pretend like I'm not taking great offense at this. And then I lose it, and it's the first of I think 3 Cruise claps in this movie, which is just like an incredible weird gesture that he does. Like the best is when he's walking down the street and he just claps, but he claps at her. And then she's just doing like, I'm like a panther. I'm like all through the room, up, down, pointing, screaming, laughing. And then when he's just like, you're just trying to start the argument, she's like, I'm not arguing. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from. It's like so perfectly calibrated, and
She's playing chess. he's
it's
playing
one of the
checkers.
great couple
Totally.
fights in movies. Yeah.
I also think Cruise might have really been like this, where he was impossible to fight with because he's just this good energy.
Well, not to get too
happy
deep
guy.
into it, but like a lot of the stuff in Scientology is like efficiency and like optimizing like experiences and just being like, I'm, to borrow a Vince McMahonism, cutting out the negatives, you know, like it's about like what's the optimal version of this experience. And I think you can kind of see some of that stuff coming up. I don't know if, I mean, they wrote a lot of the script on the set, so you have to imagine that Kubrick is definitely dialed into who he's directing.
Mallory, you don't ever fight with your husband, so you don't know what it's like. But is this what you would imagine it would be like?
I famously get along with everyone.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've heard other people say,
Many people say I get along with everyone.
as I understand it from other people, what's the most painful kind of fight you can have with somebody you love? It's not really when you're like unburdening yourself. It's when you're trying deliberately to wound the other person. Those
Right.
are the ones
Yeah.
that really stick with you. And that's what this is. Like, why is she sharing any of this about the naval officer in a year ago in Cape Cod? And like the extent of it, it's not just, I wanted to fuck another guy. It's, I couldn't wait to leave you and our daughter behind, and I wouldn't have even thought about it once.
I also think
right?
that there's like the part of
Tough one.
like couple fighting where you're like, it doesn't really matter why the fight started. This person has clearly been waiting months to tell me this.
Sure.
And that is
You're just looking
exactly
for your
what they
end.
capture in that movie. Like she belittles like his profession. She's like kind of knocking like the way he goes through his life. He's like just always just being like, he's obviously being so condescending to her. Like the dynamic of their fight is like incredibly true.
Do you buy that he named them Bill and Alice because those are two like kind of generic names? I'm named Bill, by the way. I can say this, but like he just wanted them. He's a generic job.
Stand in for every
She's
marriage.
a generic mom with one parent, but then just smoldering underneath.
Maybe in a way. I think you also
That
have
was
to
one
be
of
a
the
little
theories I
bit
read.
skeptical of them because they're so successful. They're so bourgeois. Like their apartment which is meant to be in New York and obviously isn't in New York, is insane.
It's based
Yeah.
on Kubrick's place.
That's just absolute craziness that could be even a place you could live
Can
in
I-
New York.
I
That's
was gonna,
never happened in a movie though, where
Of
somebody's
course, yeah.
apartment
I
has been
have-
much nicer.
I don't know if this is an unanswerable question, but I had a question about this.
So many unanswerable questions.
How rich are they? Because I was wondering, like, at what, like, are they getting an invitation to Ziegler's because that's like the social circles they travel in? Or are they like, this is kind of like high altitude?
I
for
thought it
us?
was high altitude.
I think
was
so
my
too,
take.
but I think that
Well,
Ziegler is worth like 500 million and they're worth like 15 million, which is still a lot.
yeah, they're definitely wealthy.
Because I, thought his practice looked pretty pedestrian.
But he goes on house calls to rich people.
Yeah,
which is like that's the highest
Mm.
level of professional doctor that
That's
you
what
can
I
be.
want to get with podcasts. Just like one person.
One-on-one potting?
Yeah, just one listener.
Stop talking. It's a tremendous
Dude,
business
do you know the
opportunity for the
Patreon you
ringer.
would get for that?
Yeah, just
Bill
like,
will come to your
Come
house.
to your house. I do a one-person podcast.
Sounds
You're the only
amazing.
person
That's
over
an
here.
amazing idea.
Cameo on demand. But the moment in the dance, the wonderful dance at the beginning, she's talking about her gallery closing and couldn't make any money. And like for somebody who is not wealthy, that would be a devastating turn of events in their life. And like obviously there's some existential crisis there with what her purpose is and what she's spending her time on. But
she's,
there's
like,
no
eating
financial hit.
Yeah,
there.
but I mean, like she's eating Snackwells and drinking cigarettes. Like I kind of felt like there is a reality to her life that is not like Ziegler's. You know, like
Definitely not at that stratosphere, but think about just how much money Bill shells out on the night in question.
Mm.
Like the every
I thought you were talking about Bill.
it's confusing because the
Think about how
the
much money
alternative
Bill shells
Let's call him
out.
Cruz.
well,
I
the
keep getting
alternative is to
confused.
say Dr. Bill, and then you're going to think we're
Dr.
talking
Bill.
about
who's
him.
spent
Yeah,
more,
that's not helpful
Bill at
either.
Caesars in July or Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut?
But every single transaction is here's an extra 100 on top of what I need to give.
Yeah.
Here's an extra 200. Here's
Yeah.
an extra 50 if you leave the meter running. I mean, it's
They've got money.
Yeah.
They've definitely got money.
The forgotten password party scene.
oh, we skipped another.
Oh,
one.
we skipped
What
another.
did we skip?
Well, I like just the entire sequence of Bill's night out from Marion to Domino to Nick. So
Yeah.
like that
Marion's
whole New
love
York sequence.
confession is incredible.
I had
awesome.
completely forgotten about
my
that scene
God.
when watching it.
I don't want to go away with Carl.
Marion, I don't think you realize.
I do. Even if I'm never to see you again, I want at least to live near you.
It's so painful.
But that is the exact moment when you're like, this is a dream. Like, this is not something that would happen. Now, people obviously get emotional.
I
and they-
barely know you.
Yeah, but like, that is when you're like, oh, everybody in the movie wants to fuck Tom Cruise because Tom Cruise is dreaming.
Right.
Like,
And
it doesn't
they
make
all
any
vaguely
sense.
look alike.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
I love that Marion scene. That was supposed to be Jennifer Jason Leigh. She
That's right.
she shot that scene
Mhm.
and they had to reshoot it.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand that part.
I don't think you're supposed to.
No, though Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Oh,
like,
I think
what
he wanted to
happened?
do a bunch of reshoots and she was on making a David Cronenberg movie. But yeah, that whole sequence of his night out in New York and finally going to see Nick at the Sonata, I thought was like,
Well, so the party scene, it's all leading to it.
Mhm.
And the first time you watch this, and there had been nobody's, by the time anyone actually saw this in the theater, that it you kind of knew a little bit, and it was like the party scene. And when he shows up at the gate and he's walking in, and it's just like, oh my God, they're really going for it, huh?
Mhm.
There's just naked women everywhere and
Mhm.
guys in fucking masks, and it's super weird, and there's crazy music, and then all of a sudden he's in danger.
Mhm.
The first time you watch it, it's pretty good.
It's riveting.
You're going, oh my God,
It was
Yeah.
riveting.
what's going to happen to this fucking guy?
great.
Like, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
completely.
This
It's one of the all-time like I have no idea where this movie is
Yeah.
going movies.
It's
You
everything's on
can't-
the table.
You can't have there'd be no way to predict what would come after the first 20 minutes of the movie.
They're like, yeah, your taxi driver wants to see you. Okay, cool. And then it's like, oh no, actually, there's a room full of 300 people in mass, naked, a guy in a fucking throne, and he's mad at Tom Cruise.
I think that the way he turns up the volume throughout the movie on the crazy is amazing. So you start with Marion, that's like a little weird. Keep going out. Domino's a
I
little
can't believe we
weird.
skipped Domino.
do you
I just
Let's talk about it.
you didn't want to talk about Domino?
I was going to talk about it later.
That's
but
like-
I was going to do what's age the best. For
Oh, okay,
Domino.
okay. Well, then I'll save it then.
But like it gets
Not
weirder
Domino.
with Domino. The interaction with Nick is weird, you know, and like
Totally.
the fact that he walks in just as he's finishing, that kind of thing. At what time is it supposed to be at that point? Like
Like, why did he tell him the password and then say like you can't
but
come?
he doesn't
So
even tell him. He
confusing.
like
Writes
he
it down on the
steals the
napkin.
napkin
Yeah.
from him, and then Millich to get the cloak. And the Millich scene is you're
That
like,
is-
what the fuck are
That's
we
an
doing
upsetting
here?
Yes.
sequence.
Yes. And the Japanese guys, and then you get to the Fidelio party and you're like, oh, we're gone. Like it's
Yeah.
like
I really wanted to make that a rewatchable scene, but I didn't want you guys to think I was weird.
The Lily Sobieski
we're
part?
doing an Eyes Wide Shut podcast.
But that
with you.
scene's actually really. Every time that's on, I'm like, what the fuck? The Japanese guys have wigs on, and it's like, what is happening?
But the Millich
It's so
performance
weird.
is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, please have the goodness to be quiet for the moment. Couldn't you see I tried to serve my customer? Sorry. And you, little whore, go to bed at once, you depraved creature. I deal with you as soon as I serve the gentleman.
That guy is one of the great character actors. in
My
Hollywood.
hair is falling down.
Right here.
So what do you think? I mean, we can do an unanswerable question now. Do you think he was pretending for Tom Cruise the first time that he didn't know what was going on? Or do you think he didn't know what was going on, but then worked out a deal with those guys?
I never arrived at a conclusion.
I always
about
thought
this.
it was just a scam or a con, like that. It's all part of the charade because charades are such a huge part of this. That
Yeah.
like those Japanese guys actually pay to get caught, quote unquote,
Oh.
and it's all part of like it turns them on to
They
like.
pay to get
that's-
caught.
But
Well,
is it-
CR. It's
That's what
fucking
I thought,
dark,
too.
man.
But was it just a coincidence that Bill knocked on their door and then he
They're
caught
waiting
him
for
while
anyone
Bill
to
was
knock.
there?
Yeah.
That's a
That's a
great,
good question.
great question.
This is why I don't like dream sequence shows or movies.
I mean, he
'Cause
is
it's
going
like,
to a
the answer
costume
could be
store at
anything.
like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
in the West Village.
Yeah.
The party scene.
Gentlemen, please. I love that guy.
I really like the scene when Cruise gets followed on the streets of New York.
That's
I like scenes when
Yeah.
anyone's getting followed and they realize they're being followed and then there's creepy music. I'm
Does he
always
get
in.
harassed by the frat guys?
That's earlier.
That's
That's
earlier.
weird.
That's not good.
That hasn't
Um,
aged well.
No.
Yeah, I had that in What's Age the Worst. The your favorite scene, the Sidney Pollack pool table.
Just amazing. Everything Sidney Pollack does in this movie is
He's fabulous.
chef's kiss.
Yeah.
He's the 25-year-old Scotch of this movie.
Totally.
Goes down smooth.
He's perfect.
every time.
Plus, we didn't mention. Well, I'll save it. Listen, Bill. Nobody killed anybody. Someone died. It happens all the time. Life goes on. It always does until it doesn't. But you know that, don't you? I don't even know what that means.
Cut.
Amazing.
And then they go to the next scene. It's fucking terrifying.
I really like the ending. I like the last scene.
hmm
I like
Them
the
talking in the
Christmas-
store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Amazing
really
scene.
good.
Yeah.
Are we skipping Alice telling Bill about her dream?
No,
That's just an all-timer.
throw it in there.
I'm going to read a quote aloud to you.
Let's do it.
This is a real thing that's in this movie. And then I texted all of this to Chris last night, by the way. And then I was fucking other men. So many. I don't know how many I was with. And I knew you could see me in the arms of all these men. Just fucking all these men.
Why did you read that quote?
What?
I can't believe that's real.
Why are?
She has to say that to her actual husband.
Why did these two people make this movie?
I don't
What is
know.
wrong with them?
It's such
And I
a
wanted to make fun of you to
cruel
laugh
joke.
in your face, and so I laughed as loud as I could. Oh my god, that is savage.
It's kind of an indictment on how dumb actors are. You know that Stanley, they could meet somebody like Stanley Kubrick, and he's made so many great movies, and you're like, I'll just do anything for this guy, and he's like, I've got just the thing.
Right.
I will destroy you and your marriage. It's just crazy that they agreed to do this. And
How many
obviously,
other
like,
actors did he destroy?
I mean, he definitely destroyed
Shelley
the
Duvall
Full
was
Metal
never
Jacket
the same.
guys. You know,
Oh, yeah, all
the
those
cast
guys.
is, you know, and Modine like loves him and adores him to this day. But that sounded like the craziest goddamn shoot ever. And obviously, Shelley Duvall, like you mentioned, Malcolm
about
McDowell
Ryan
still loves
O'Neal?
him. Ryan O'Neal and Barry Lyndon, same shit. He did 100 takes of every scene in that movie. Everything's lit with candles, so it's impossible to shoot that movie.
Because I'd always heard it started with Ryan O'Neal because he realized pretty early on Ryan O'Neal was the wrong person to be in that movie and just decided to fuck with him.
Well, I mean, even Strangelove, George C. Scott, and Peter Sellers are two of the absolute craziest people that have ever been in movies. And imagine a movie with him shooting scenes with those two guys.
Right.
So it goes all the way back, I think.
his
George C. Scott.
his reputation is so huge that it takes a really long time to do the "Are we sure he's good?" conversation. You know, like you just can't even consider it when you're like watching Full Metal Jacket. You're like, you shot this Vietnam War movie in England. This doesn't look
Doesn't
like
like
Vietnam
to fly.
at all.
Doesn't like to
Right.
travel.
And I think Full Metal Jacket might have been the first of the big Vietnam War movies that I saw. So like when I saw Platoon or Apocalypse, I was like, man, this is pretty green. It's pretty tropical in Vietnam. I did not know that. And it was because Stanley Kubrick shot a fucking Vietnam War movie in Sheffield. And you would never, if somebody did that today, you would just be like, nope, eject. That's not, but he had that reputation. He had
I think the first 40 minutes of Full Metal Jacket is the peak of Kubrick for me.
Oh, interesting.
I think until Pyle dies, just everything, watching Pyle just disintegrate into fucking personal hell, and then everything, just the way he does it is just amazing.
You know the hipster take, right?
What is
the
it?
hipster take is that the second half is better than the first.
Fuck those people. That's why I don't like hipsters. Most rewatchable scene.
Set him up for that one.
What's your answer?
The stone fight.
Same.
Okay. I really like the party.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. The party's great.
Which brings me to what's age the best. The running joke about the Eyes Wide Shut party. I feel like I've gotten 20 years of that. It's just a go-to joke.
Yeah.
You throw it in there, like, what the fuck's going on there? It's either the Key Party from
Ice Storm
or the Eyes Wide Shut party, but you can just go to it at a time. Another what's age the best. Late 1990s Nicole Kidman. Just jaw-dropping. Really, all time. She was great in Dead Calm, so it's not like she aged into being like stunning, but really just beautiful on a movie screen.
Mm-hmm. The first shot of this movie,
it's her naked,
is her ass.
Yeah, he's like, I'm
That's how
owning
this
this
opens.
early,
and it ends on her saying, "Fuck."
And you know who shot that opening scene? Kubrick. It was just like him and those two on the set for like 4 days. Yeah,
I don't think there's. I think it's a
what a
relatively
sicko.
Yeah, that's psycho. It's a relatively short list of actresses who can pull off that level of like sexual swagger, for lack of a better.
I mean, she's an
phrase.
alien. Like she still looks insanely beautiful. She's in her 50s now. I mean, she is like an alien. There's no, you kind of can't compare her to people because she is like a doll-like figure, and he's obsessed with these doll-like women. You know, that's the whole point of the movie too, is the way that men like sexualize a very specific body type, very specific shape, a very specific race, very specific hair color. Like all of that is all very purposeful, and she embodied at that time in Hollywood like that pinnacle, beautiful woman, and still Bill is unsatisfied by her.
I was at lunch once with John Walsh in Beverly Hills in like 2004. And at this weird lunch place, he wanted to
I'm scared right now. I'm nervous.
Is he writing something on the napkin?
And it was one of those like big open room restaurants where but one room. The door opened and Nicole Kidman came in, and it stopped the restaurant. And it was the only time I've ever seen that happen at any restaurant I've ever been to in LA, where she's just like beautiful. She's tall. And she looks like a famous person, and she's beautiful, and everybody was just like an alien had landed in the restaurant. It's the only time I've ever seen that. She's beautiful.
That's
Sidney
why
Pollack.
Sean likes this movie so much, by the way.
He likes
the
it
number
'cause
of
Sidney Pollack
redheads.
Sidney Pollack and suspenders.
Beautiful redheads.
There are so many redheads. Shout out to Sally.
Lot of redheads.
Oh my God, Sally. Holy cow.
Sidney Pollack, a director, an accomplished Oscar-winning
A
director.
lot of
Has,
seven
like, the
directors
third
in the
most
cast.
important part in
Is
this
that right?
movie. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Something like that. 6 or 7
directors.
directors in the cast.
Yeah, I mean, I think he gets one, Pollock started out as an actor, so it's not like this is the first time he ever did that. Two, he really, really like idolized Kubrick, even though they're basically contemporaries. He is just like fascinated. Like he doesn't actually understand how Kubrick makes his movies, and that's one of the reasons why I think he gives such a good performance. You know, because he really wants to learn. He wants to be on the set all this time. So when he's doing 60 takes, he's probably enjoying himself.
You love him in the suspenders. That's also age the best for you.
Incredible.
I mean, that scene too is just like completely perverse, but is
So you
fascinating.
would
Giant
never
painting?
talk about the bathroom.
Okay.
That's an unanswerable question,
Yeah, save it for that.
Okay.
right?
Sure.
Another what's age the best. They used The Shining's ballroom music. He snuck that in as part of the greatest hits thing.
The opening shots, like of the dance, looks like The Shining. It looks
Yeah.
like you're back in The Shining.
The creepy piano music in The Eyes Wide Shut that I feel like my son could play. I never wanted to see this movie, but
That's
it's
a
the kind of thing he
cool
could
career
learn how to
path for
do.
Ben.
No, like because he likes to play the Halloween music on the piano, but he could do the dun 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 dun. I'd be like, what's going on?
Georgi Ligeti. That's who that is.
It's the backwards priest, right?
Yeah.
That's the name of it.
I'm just gonna brisk through this one quickly. Kubrick's commitment to a natural look, shall we say, for his naked people, I respect and admire. Not a lot of like silicone in this movie. Yeah.
Well,
no.
So it seems.
So it seems.
You're such a
Any
skeptic.
other what's age the best for you, Mal?
It's all a dream.
Lighten up a joint at home. You know?
In the Band-Aids, in the Band-Aid thingy.
Yeah, that's aged well.
Unwinding at home.
Yeah.
Speaking your truth.
Yeah, they were really fucking unwinding.
You know, they didn't
the
have
pot
ease.
really facilitated a cool,
They were
calm night at
winding.
home. Yeah.
I love that. You know, the taxi cab era. No GPS, no smartphones for your spouse to track your
That's true.
infidelity.
No find a friend there.
Yeah, that's
He does have a cell phone though.
Yeah.
It's true, but that's, early generation, right? The masks you already said and just more
Great
broadly.
mask.
But the thing about that is, like Sean was saying earlier, it's timeless, the secret society aspect where it holds up now, but you can also imagine this happening in the 1700s and any time in between. And then I think just more broadly, the exploration of sexual appetite, that really holds up. It really, really does. That's why I like that Marion confession of love scene, by the way, because it's impossible to think about or talk about the movie without thinking about it and considering the fact that Cruise and Kidman are married in real life, but then you have that actress and that character, and it's a reminder that everybody has their version of this, right?
Yeah.
It's not actually specific to those people. Like, who's she in the room with? Her father, her fiance, Carl, and the man she wants to be with. In other words, like the three people that you would want to show your best self to. And all you can do is finally give in to what you actually want. I love that. Shouts to Marion.
I mean, there's an alternative interpretation, which is that, death creates confusing emotion. Sure. And it like there's like a desperation and a vulnerability that comes out of that. And like this whole movie is kind of about that too, like the death of their relationship. And then what is that driving Bill to do? Is their relationship actually dead? We're getting a little bit.
What does the news? What does
English
Kubrick
101.
dying right after he showed
what does
the
the news?
cut.
What does the newspaper say though? That Cruise picks up after
Lucky to
he finds
be
out that
alive.
Domino
Lucky to be
is
alive.
diagnosed with HIV. Lucky to be alive.
I think
the
that
same thing again.
the movie is made to be timeless. So in a sense, the movie itself ages the best. Like there's nothing of 1999 that is like specific to the way they talk, what they talk about, how they talk. The emotions are essentially like anybody who's ever been in a serious relationship can identify certain things that are happening. And then there's like little tidbits that make it like a cool experience. Like I was really freeze framing, trying to figure out what football game Bill was watching.
Oh, seemed like an old USFL game.
It seemed like a Michigan State game or
Yeah.
something. Like there was
Wasn't Kubrick like a big football fan?
Yeah.
but I was trying to figure out what he was watching. That like there's like a couple of little hints here and there to like a culture outside of the movie, but for the most part, it's happening in this guy's mind.
I think you can make a case it's aged the best of any 1999 movie because it doesn't take place really in a year. It can be right now, except for the cabs.
Yeah.
So I guess
There's still plenty of
his
cabs
wife
in New
could be
York.
texting him, "Where are you?" But other than that,
Except there'd be one guy at the party who was like tweeting under his cloak, like,
yeah, that's true.
"It's about to go down." #Fidelio. #Ziegler's house. #Rothschilds.
It's like the Prague episode of Succession.
Lit AF. Yeah. The closed loop system.
It's like it never left my body.
Follow on IG for my story.
What's
Just met this great chick named Mandy.
What's aged the worst? We mentioned the gay bashing scene, which is just weird.
There is a purpose to the scene though, which is that Bill has just had his sexuality undermined by his wife, and now he's in the street being
Now
openly
he's having
mocked.
a dream by
Yeah.
to 6 random guys ready to gay bash him out of nowhere.
Exactly.
There's also
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise, the
is
rumors.
the gay rumors about Tom Cruise. I mean, it's like another like
Oh,
Which is a
maybe that
Kubrick-
didn't age the
Kubrick
worst.
fucking being like, I am absolutely going for it right now.
Totally.
Oh, that's you right. I'm taking that out then.
It has
That's a
purpose.
good
I mean,
call.
it's got
there is some purpose.
I
forgot
don't
about
think
the
that
Cruise
those
part.
guys did 60 takes. It looked like he had them on the set for like 5 minutes and then was like, you guys can get lunch and get out of here. Like
Yeah.
that was definitely like, hey man, it goes in, not out. Like
What else is age the worst for you? Because I can name 30 things.
I
or
got
nothing.
a handful. We've talked about a bunch of them already. Casting an actual married couple in the film is both the best and worst thing about it. It's like so fascinating and so painful to grapple with, turning their actual pain and insecurity into artistic fodder. I would say that you could say that the actual like mystery has not aged very well. Like it's just not that interesting. Like the society is not that interesting. You're not really, you know, when Victor, it's like, if I told you who these people are, you'd never sleep again. You should obsess over figuring out who they are, and you're just kind of like, all right, sort of move on, because it's not really the point of the movie, and so much of his terror hinges on that. It's like, do we really care that much? And it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, so feeling like that's not fully developed at the end of a movie that's basically 3 hours is a little tough.
Yeah. I think it's also that's not the point of the movie, you know? It's just that it's just a device to kind of get him to this moment of crisis and to get them to that moment of crisis, you know? There's no answer, and that's kind of what you're talking about too, Bill, where you're sort of like, I don't even really know why I like this movie because there's no logical cohesion. It doesn't really it doesn't resolve in any way.
Right.
So it's
It resolved
unsatisfying.
2 years later when Cruise and Kidman got divorced.
Yeah.
It's tough. Very tough.
It's true.
That's the last 10
Kubrick
minutes.
from the grave's like, yes, I fucking did it.
He did it.
I knew it was going to happen.
You know what aged the worst?
What?
Dr. Bill's prowess as a medical professional. Terrible. His exam of an overdose victim is, here is a fleece blanket and look at me.
No, it's Mandy.
Mandy,
Mandy, open your eyes.
Move your head.
Move your head.
Mandy.
That is not
Mandy.
not what you want to
Hey.
see, folks. Especially considering how often he's like, well, I am a doctor.
But he has incredible discretion.
Yeah, and then flashing his doctor ID everywhere he goes, just annihilating his Hippocratic oath, lying about the fact that he has exam results.
I have to give
for
Nick
a
Nightingale his
patient.
medical results.
That is
Well, I think
terrible.
that was part of the dream stuff, though, that he's intentionally like a caricature of a doctor
Yeah.
versus like actually being a doctor.
For sure.
Mallory, move your head. Move it right, left.
What else has aged the worst? Just like we said, the orgy scene is so tame. You want a little more?
That's
in
he
2019.
had to jostle with the MPAA a lot. They had to put bodies in front of bodies, and there was all this. That was a huge controversy at the time. Was that he couldn't make the movie as
Have you
as
seen the
sexualized? I have, yeah. I mean, and now it's more. The uncut version is still very is racy. I guess racier. There's a lot of thrusting. You can see a lot of stuff, but it's still not like we're in like a Pornhub era,
Right.
So it's just not that crazy anymore.
Is there any male full frontal in the?
No,
So that's my final contribution to this.
that's aged the
category.
worst.
Not given how the sheer volume of the nudity in the movie, not seeing a dick at any point is fucking weird.
You wanted some Pollock dick?
Sure.
Let me introduce you to Euphoria.
Big Zeegs.
The most
Vic Dick,
99.
yeah.
The
3
most
days of the
1990
condor.
thing. Can't speak.
What's up?
Most 1999 thing about this movie.
Mm.
I think it's the Cruise Kidman marriage because that was kind of the iconic marriage of that
Sure.
decade, right?
Yeah.
Was there a bigger celebrity marriage? I don't feel like for the 90s.
No.
Bill and Hillary Clinton, maybe.
Yeah, and
You
it's-
know?
if you go political.
Yeah.
Yeah, for celebrities.
Not that we're
this is
saying that
it.
there's anything, eyes wide shut about Bill and Hillary.
No, not at all. Nothing.
Not at all.
Casting what ifs in the
Mm.
70s when Kubrick wanted to do this, he had Woody Allen as the protagonist. That would have been a disaster.
There's a moment in one of the featurettes too where Kubrick talks about how he's obsessed with Woody Allen because Woody Allen was able to make a movie every year, and he so admired that, but he was incapable of doing it. I don't know if he would. Still admire Woody
1980s,
Allen.
Steve Martin. It was going to be a sex comedy with a quote wild and somber streak running through it. Mal, you better sit down for this one. Harrison Ford was a top choice at one point. That might have ended you.
Well, so this is where the last name Harford comes from, right? It's a nod
Harrison
to
Ford.
Harrison Ford. Incredible. I don't know if I could have handled Harrison.
I think it
Ford
would have
in
been
this
better
movie.
with him in some ways.
Has Harrison Ford been in like a real erotic thriller?
Yeah.
Witness.
I mean,
What's
Presumed
the-
Innocent
didn't he do
has
this-
kind of
the
that
Roman
going on.
Polanski one.
Frantic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
don't feel like he's been in a movie like this.
He would have been fucking incredible.
Presumed Innocent is pretty
I
erotic.
think What Lies Beneath too, in a weird way.
Mhm.
He's done it sometimes.
Imagine his
Like girls in
eyes
that
behind
movie.
that mask.
Him in the late 80s doing this movie would have been really interesting.
Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger considered at one point.
Mhm.
I don't think Basinger that didn't really have the
They
acting
didn't need
chops.
this movie to have their marriage destroyed.
Right. And then we mentioned Jennifer Jason Leigh and Harvey Keitel.
I have one more in there.
Johnny Depp.
each.
Bill.
I don't believe the Johnny Depp thing.
Well, a lot of
I
the
don't think
stuff that's
Kubrick's going
coming
near
in
Johnny Depp.
Casting What Ifs and half-ass internet research, I should say, comes from David Hughes' complete Kubrick book, which is really awesome. But Val Kilmer apparently sent 30 unsolicited audition tapes with Kilmer to
amazing.
Kubrick.
And he would have gone full frontal. Best that guy, aka the Joey Pants Award. It has to be Lee Sobieski's dad, right? What's that guy's name?
Rada Serbadija? I don't know. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Anybody else for that guy? Or
Well,
that
Todd
girl?
Field.
Todd Field, but he stops acting after a while.
Yeah,
Right?
but he goes on to direct Little Children and In the Bedroom.
The Saul Rubinek Day New Award. The Hungarian guy who hits on Alice at the first party I had written down, but I'll rescind that one.
No.
Sky Dumont.
He
I
earned
also
it.
had Lily Sobieski's dad for this one too, because
Yeah.
he's really feeling it.
Oh yeah.
Dion Waiters.
I'm gonna go.
And we can go Mandy for this one.
You could say Mandy. I want to throw out Alan Cumming.
Has to be Alan Cumming.
Alan Cumming
Incredible Alan
at the
Cumming
hotel.
showing.
Okay.
It's funny you should ask that question, Bill, because actually there was something a little strange about the way Mr. Nightingale left, yes.
Really? What was that?
I
The
mean,
facial expressions.
he is going for it.
Yeah.
It
The
is like
lean
it's
in.
in a different movie.
It's incredible.
Really enjoyed him.
Half-ass internet research. Kate Blanchett was the voice of the mysterious masked woman at the orgy.
Why?
Because it could cost me my life, and possibly yours.
Let me see your face.
No. Go.
During the movie, they sued Star Magazine for writing that they had sex therapists to coach them during the scenes. They actually sued them for that. And we mentioned the Rothschild scene.
Also, there was a speculation that Sidney Pollack was brought in as Warner Brothers' spy.
Wow.
And also
take
that
it
he was
over?
brought in because he was like the cruise whisperer. So when they got rid of Keitel and like Pollack was brought in, it was like there was rumors that it's like, oh, they're bringing Pollack in to like make sure this doesn't go completely to pot.
There's all kinds of weird rumors about why Keitel was taken off this project, but I'm not going to mention it.
Unfortunately,
There's also
we can't
like Gary
discuss those.
Oldman just told the story once where it's just like Keitel just like lost it. Like
Yeah.
on the 88th take of opening a door, he was like, goodbye, I'm fucking out.
There are some worse stories.
Are there?
There's some,
Yeah, we just recently heard about one that we can't share.
Apex Mountain?
But you're gonna
Anybody?
say it.
Apex Mountain? Anybody? I guess this is Apex Mountain for the Eyes Wide Shut party.
Yeah.
Orgies? Just
Yeah,
orgies in general?
Big orgies with bass.
Right, because I guess this was still at a time when like nobody believed they were real. So it's like
It's
they
a
get the
little pre-internety
exposure.
still.
Yeah.
How about movies filmed in London pretending to be in New York?
Apex
Apex?
Mountain.
All right,
Yeah.
great. Picking nits. Want to pick some nits, Mel?
Sure. Most of the ones I have for this are pretty small. I have a hard time believing that Alice got that high off a couple hits of one joint.
So my follow-up to that is bad stoned. You don't act like that when you're stoned. She acted like she was drunk.
Well, she's
Everyone
drunk
responds
too.
differently.
Right? She's drunk too. It's after the party, right?
I don't know. I thought you'd mellow it out a little
I
more.
mean, she's drinking a lot of champagne.
Yeah.
And she's spending a lot of time with our Hungarian
I feel like
count.
she'd be sloppy. I don't
But
find
this is later because they
Yeah.
have the mirror sex right
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah.
mirror sex.
Time passes. This
Mhm.
is a separate sequence of visits. She is
But Bill was
pretty often
he was
throwing
good to
down
go.
booze.
Like he was ready. So who knows how much time passed? He's got those models in front of him.
That's right.
I was confused by, even though every sequence with Domino and her roommate is wonderful, Domino's roommate clearly knows all about Bill, right?
Yeah.
Says, oh, I heard from Domino, what a wonderful guy you are. And yet doesn't know that they didn't sleep together.
But she wasn't there.
But she's implying that she heard all about him.
Yeah.
And great
that
level
whole
of
scene is
detail.
really interesting because obviously if you just operate under the
But things
assumption
could've
that
been
it's
affected.
a dream, then you don't have to worry about it making sense. But the fact that they gave Domino HIV, I guess, is like a really it's hard to untangle what that means.
I think it's just
The
that
threat of living dangerously?
Yeah, he by changing his mind and staying safe, he was able to survive. You know, and by committing to the concept of marriage and his spouse that he didn't kill himself. I mean, he almost killed himself at this party. Every time he gets close to making a bad choice, he somehow avoids it. And when he avoids it, he stays alive, which is this like the illusion of safety in marriage, I think is like a big theme of the movie.
Can we pick the nit that Domino would have had a roommate and that there was somebody out there like, oh, this is Domino's roommate. Like that's somebody named Domino would have a roommate? No?
Just a person named Domino?
Yeah, I don't feel like they should.
I don't think she was born Domino. I think she probably gave herself that
Yeah.
name as a professional
Hey,
sex
That
Domino
had real
there?
like
Hold
the
on, I'll
Deuce
get her.
vibes to me.
Yeah.
Domino and her roommate seemed like, I mean, I'm sure that they've had hard times, but like that apartment was especially a shithole.
Yeah.
It's like it really did look like, like a Depression era jail cell or something. It was kind of weird that they didn't just like tidy up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Bill is taking his coat off and putting it in like a tub in
Yeah,
the
that's
corner
true.
because there's
Yeah.
no other surface to put it in. Speaking of Bill relaxing in an apartment setting, do we buy that Dr. Bill wears Uggs at home? Do we buy that?
I can see it. Slippers, watching a football game, drinking a Budweiser.
I'll just say
Guy loves
that they were
Budweiser.
not really of the slipper line. Speaking of beer, that's another one. He's just like, I'll have a beer. What kind? He
Yeah, but-
doesn't strike me as a, I'll just have a
Someone
beer
just
guy.
mentioned this to us that we were talking to about this movie.
I don't
Yeah.
buy that.
I mean, that ultimately just feels like they couldn't get Anheuser-Busch to sign off on the Sex Orgy Rothschilds movie.
But he's clearly holding a Budweiser.
I know,
at
but you
home
don't
later.
see the label. You just see the color, so you indicate. But that's why he has to ask for a beer.
There's nothing about this movie that
But that struck me
feels
too.
authentic. I mean, like just even the way that people introduce themselves, like all of the Nick Bill stuff is like, do these guys know each other?
Mhm.
Is Nick real? What is actually happening here? Like when he's like, I haven't seen you in what is it, 10 years and then some. No, like what? Who talks like that?
My favorite quote is, I assure you that Nick is safely back home and he's probably banging Mrs. Nick as we speak.
That's a great one.
Other than the ones we mentioned. I love Pollock, just
That
the
was
Mrs. Nick.
Nick
great.
is fucking dead as
Any other-
Dillinger, man.
Give
There's
me
no
three
way.
other of your favorite quotes, Mel.
Do the full Kidman voice when you do this though.
I already did the I was fucking so many other men once, so I'll leave that out here, though that's obviously the pick. My dude Sandor during the dance at the beginning, my main dude. Don't you think one of the charms of marriage is that it makes deception a necessity for both parties?
Don't you think one of the charms of marriage is that it makes deception a necessity for both parties?
That's a great line. That's actually, to your point about like, do people talk this way? A lot of the dialogue is like just very flat and basic deliberately. Like it matches that like facade like nature of a lot of the performances. That's like poetry, that line. And so it kind of stands out in contrast. What else?
That's good. We got to move on anyway.
Can I just do one Ziegler?
Yeah.
Okay, Bill, let's cut the bullshit, all right? You've been way out of your depth for the last 24 hours. You want to know what kind of charade? I'll tell you exactly what kind. That whole play-acted, take-me, phony sacrifice that you've been jerking off with had nothing to do with the real death. The truth is, nothing happened to her after you left that party that hadn't happened to her before. She got her brains fucked out, period.
It's good.
That's the one time in the movie where you're like, oh, maybe this is really happening.
That's the
Yeah.
the Straight Talk Express right there.
Yeah.
Pulling into the station.
Pollock.
You gonna do the titty squeezed line?
No.
Yes, you are.
You love that. Now, when she is having her little titty squeezed, do you think she ever has any little fantasies about what handsome Dr. Bill's Dickie might be like?
The way she does that, she just squeezed her little titties.
That's such a
I
funny
can't believe
line.
Tom Cruise sat there while his wife said, "Put your little Dickie in them."
Yeah, do you think she ever has any fantasies about what handsome Dr. Bill's Dickie might be like?
It was like take 74.
Yeah.
He was in a half coma.
That's
Poor
why
guy.
he's
Oh, she's
clapping
great.
because he's like,
It'd be like if we did the rewatchables for 11 straight hours, which is possible with some of the movies we have left.
It's not a great way to raise money for charity.
By the 10th hour, we'd be saying shit like. Next category. Could this be remade as a 10-episode Netflix show? I mean, no, because I feel like Kubrick's so essential. But this actually, if Netflix existed in 1999, I wonder if that's the direction he could have gone.
I
with
think
this.
Pornhub is producing it, actually. I think there is going to be.
the Mandy story.
Yeah.
Probably unanswerable questions.
I
What
have
did
so
the
many.
ending mean?
So
the novella explains why the husband's mask is on the pillow next to his sleeping wife. I mean, I guess
Right.
the ending
She
before the
found
ending.
it, right?
She discovered it. It slipped out of his suitcase. And in the novella, she places it there as a statement of understanding. Like, I know you're exploring some stuff. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, we're even.
The movie, it's unclear why it's there. So why is it there?
I thought it was supposed to have been placed there by the
Somebody to
Fidelio
intimidate him.
people
Yes.
to be like, we can get at you at the most. There is no inner sanctum for you. There's no safety for you. So just so you know that this is how it is.
Okay.
I thought that too, but then the thing about that is she doesn't respond to it at all. Like that would be terrifying. Strangers,
But she's
breaking
also
into your
not like,
home and
what's this
putting that
fucking
there.
mask? Like,
Yeah,
I
that's-
found it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. She doesn't.
I
really
thought
respond
that
either way.
that was my interpretation, but who knows? Was this a good career move for Cruise? He said a year later, I didn't like playing Dr. Bill. I didn't like him. It was unpleasant. But I would have absolutely kicked myself if I hadn't done this. That sounds like he regrets it. Was this a good career move for Cruise? It is part of the weird Cruise Apex legacy, but at the same time, I just wish he had done a different movie. I don't know how to feel
It's
about
really
it, to be
interesting
honest.
because we don't. I feel like he is not the most candid like person about some
Well,
of
him
this stuff.
saying it was unpleasant
No,
is like
but
a
like
big concession from him.
it's hard to game out. Are movies like Eyes Wide Shut why he decides to kind of basically pull up the drawbridge and just do franchise
That
Tom
is
Cruise movies?
100%. That I think it changes his career forever, and not necessarily for the worse, because I think he's actually found this great equilibrium in the last 5 years of just like, all right, he's a great action star. He's still a great movie star. You'd kind of watch him in anything. There's a part of us that wishes he would go back to doing movies like this or going back to doing movies like Top Gun, and he is doing a Top Gun movie. But things really, really change after this because Mission Impossible 2 is not very good. Vanilla Sky is considered a huge fiasco by a lot of people, even though it was a hit. And
He
then
makes Magnolia though.
he does, which comes shortly after
See, I think
this.
this is the
When
most
he's in
interesting part of his
inspiration
He does that
period.
little run with Spielberg, and then there's couch jumping, and then Spielberg starts working with Tom
I
Hanks
like this
instead.
weird stretch of him though. Magnolia.
I
Vanilla
like
Sky
it
in this
too.
movie, it's like he's feeling himself. But I'm with you. I think after the couch jumping, he's like, all right. I'm
But
just
I
gonna
think he
make
got spooked before
generic
that, which is
movies.
why he recedes to Spielberg, which is like safe hands,
Mm-hmm.
easy blockbuster. I know that whatever I get is not going to be that crazy because Spielberg doesn't make crazy movies. Like he does kind of, he
Unfortunately,
pulls back.
Spielberg had him throw a baseball, which is unforgivable.
Not ideal. Not ideal.
Was this Kubrick's final cut?
That's a great one.
We'll never know.
I don't know.
This is not a probably unanswerable question. It's unanswerable. We have no idea.
I don't know.
So wait,
Cruise and
I
Kidman
did not
saw
think
this.
that was. I mean, I always thought that it was pretty well documented that this was his final cut, and he passed away after that. No,
I think
Unconfirmed.
that's what the
That's what they
Illuminati want you to
want you
think,
to
Chris
believe.
Ryan.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, there's statements to either effect, right? There are people like his brother-in-law said that he thought it was his quote greatest contribution to the art of cinema.
Mhm.
That's the thing Kubrick said about it and was like, this is done, this is ready, this is a great achievement. And then other people saying he thought this was a piece of shit. And
Yeah,
then
Arlie
people,
Ermy said he had a
Yes,
conversation
yeah.
with him. The
weeks
drill
before he died.
sergeant from
Debunked,
Full Metal Jacket.
then his daughter
Todd
debunked
Field
it.
and also said that was total bullshit.
So
and
there's
Arlie
a lot
Ermy
of
was off his rocker.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. But then I think it's less even about what people say and more like just how meticulous he was. Like, would he ever have stopped fiddling?
and
with
whether
it,
he was
right?
killed by the Illuminati to stop
Also
them
that.
exposing their secrets.
Yeah, also that.
What would you say? 10% chance?
8%.
8% chance? Would you put it above 10%?
I think I'd put it single digit percentage.
That it's not his final cut.
Oh, I thought you meant was he killed by the Illuminati?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Oh my god.
7?
So you would say 9.5%.
It's like that would be the ceiling. What
How
would you
old
say?
was he? Wasn't that fucking old?
I think he was in his early 70s. He definitely was not killed by the Illuminati, so we're all good.
Definitely?
Yeah, I think
You don't
so.
think the Illuminati is like, wait a second, you're filming in the fucking Rothschild mansion?
He was 70 years
You're
old.
dying.
Who killed him? Who was it who actually went and killed him?
The Illuminati. I don't know. I'm just saying, is it 7% chance? 4% chance? Did you bet your life the Illuminati didn't kill him?
I think it was Beyonce who once said, y'all haters corny with that Illuminati mess. That's all I'm going to say.
Any other unanswerable questions?
Yes.
No.
Yes, there are a
Let's
ton.
go.
Wait, do your bathroom thing.
Okay. Early in the film, Victor calls Dr. Bill up to fetch Mandy and revive her.
With a fleece blanket.
And he enters into a bathroom. And in the bathroom is also a home office.
Yeah. There's a writing desk.
There's a desk. There's a garbage can. There's a filing cabinet. There's all sorts of writing materials. She's sitting in a big chair. But then beside them is a shower and a tub and a toilet.
Yep.
Who the fuck puts their office in the bathroom?
It's so
What kind of weird rich people shit is that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I might do it my next house.
Sub-question. Is Ziegler's wife in on all this?
We never see her again after the first.
Well, there's some
time,
people
right?
who think that she's the person. So when Bill walks in to the Fidelio party and the two people in the mask from the balcony look down at him, one nods at him, that's supposed to be Ziegler.
Right.
And that the person in the jester mask next to him is supposed to be his wife. And that this is like their jam.
Mm-hmm.
I had an unanswerable of how they knew it was him in the orgy once he comes in with the mask on.
Like, is
Are
that
they marking him?
Well, he doesn't
Like
have
in
the second
soccer?
password because it's no
but
password.
No, but before they
before that-
know it's somebody, like how do they know immediately?
He comes in a taxi cab instead of like a limo. That's one. Then he hands. You can't hand over your.
But are they
coat.
marking him from the time
The
he comes
second
in?
he arrives, first of all, his face is visible. He should have the mask on right away. So he arrives and
You seem to know a lot about proper protocol at
No,
these
this is
kinds
good-
of
this is
parties.
good to know. I
it's
wanna-
not a conspicuous
Did you
enough
kill
entrance.
Stanley Kubrick?
It's not a conspicuous enough arrival, right? He comes in a cab. He's tearing $100 bills in half in plain
I
view.
love
Very
that.
weird.
Does that
He
work?
goes out.
I don't know. I loved it. At the
That's
time,
so
I was like, that's
strange.
exactly what you do with cab drivers.
I guess you have received money in your life that's like taped up, right? So I guess so. He hands over his coat. In the coat is the receipt, as we learn later, for the costume
The
that
pedophile
he
mask shop.
rented. So there are all of these things that give him away. He's also, everybody seems to have a position that they have assumed in the circle or up in the balcony, and he's just
The
like
magic circle.
leaning on a pillar right in the entranceway. Like he stands out in numerous respects. I think the question that I like linger on a little more is how does the mystery woman know immediately to like pull him and say you're in danger? Because she's really
It's very
she's in the middle of the ritual.
That's a good
when all
unanswerable
of that
question.
is
But that,
happening.
I don't understand.
She doesn't
how
know about
knew
the
it was him and how
cab.
to
Yeah.
save him.
That is confusing.
Can we, while we're talking about her, can we talk about the bodies not being the same? Mandy's bodies not being the same across the film. Is this a thing that we're allowed to talk about?
It's something that I certainly remember observing as a young man seeing the film. I was like, that's not the same. Those aren't
not
the
the
same
same
breasts.
By
Yeah.
the way, I'm confused by this in 2019.
Yeah.
I thought this today when I watched it because
It did not
she's
occur
a
to
little more
me,
ample
but
in the first scene.
I think
Yes.
it goes towards also like, was all of this like orchestrated to like
Right.
show?
We're
him
meant to be
something?
confused
Yeah.
by what Ziegler's telling us.
I should go ahead and put this in half-assed internet research because I will not claim to have done a full deep dive on this. It was hard to find research. It was hard to find information on this. And
On
you're
G's
Googling
skin.
like naked man. Yeah, it's tough. But two different actresses, in addition to even what you were saying about the voiceover, the Cate Blanchett voiceover, two different actresses play the Mandy role. So it is actually a different body, according to at least one article that I found. One article.
And what was the source of the article?
I think it was The Independent.
Freemasonry.com.
Yeah,
the first
Look
Mandy,
into it on
because
your
I
own.
went to some pretty weird websites to research this part.
Oh my God. Yeah.
first Mandy was a C cup. Second Mandy was like a B cup. I mean, it's pretty noticeable.
The bodies are just completely
Yeah.
different. Completely different.
What else is unanswerable for you?
Let's see. We've done a bunch of these already. A bunch.
I like
I'm
that Cruise called it
confused.
unpleasant. That's such like a Tom Cruise way to say how
very
little
muted.
fun he had.
Yeah.
Like
very, very polite.
It's very polite.
He's like, this is a personal hell that lasted 400 days and destroyed my family.
It was
It was
unpleasant.
unpleasant.
Yeah,
Well, that's like part of the legend of the movie, too, is that even all
Amazing.
this time later, people don't really talk about what happened, right? There's still this veil of secrecy around it. So that's kind of like a coded way of crying for help all that time later. When Alice is dancing with Sandor at the beginning, is she?
I can't believe this is like the fifth time we're talking about this fucking guy.
I just love that sequence. Is she just hammered, or is she actually orgasming while dancing?
I don't
There is a
know.
moment.
No one
No, this
in,
is a good call.
in human
Thank you.
history has ever thought that.
I did.
I
last
know.
night. Why?
That's why you are a unique flower, but she has 3 glasses of champagne
She-
and a guy from
No,
the
her
fucking
head is
Dos
kinda
Equis
bobbing
ad
left and
comes
right.
up to him and
Yes!
is like,
No. Yes. He's holding her in his arms. And then it switches from dancing to all of a sudden she's like leaning back and going like, check
I thought
it
she
out.
was in an orgasmic state.
Crunch the tape on that and get back to me. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance.
This would be the worst Twitter breakout we've ever had for this podcast.
Easily. Just
Did Nicole Kidman come during the Eyes Wide Shut scene?
It's like
talking about Alice, not Nicole, but yes, carry on.
That was Nicole Kidman.
it was too bad
She's
that
committed.
the Ringer went down that day in 2019 because Chris Ryan said that the Rothschilds had Kubrick killed, and Mallory asked whether or not Nicole Kidman had an O.
This is why we needed Schnitzler on the inside. We needed him on the roster.
Get
I know.
back to
Can't
us.
believe the Athletic
Give us a
got him.
counter offer, Schnitzler.
Schnitzler. You just go to the Athletic without asking.
Come on.
Yeah.
Jesus.
How are people at the orgy performing oral sex with the masks on? Now, some of the masks,
Gotta put the
You got
masks.
some. You got some
some
half
of
masks.
the
I think they were
masks
pulled
have
out.
mouth holes.
No,
Half
I
mask.
But
think
there's
that
like-
they were pulled up.
There are a couple shots though where they seem to be wearing the mask.
It's a little more
Some
visible in the
people have taken them
uncut,
off.
where you can see that they're basically like still on, like on the top half of their head, but they're pulled up.
Okay.
Do you think
Does that look
everybody-
comfortable or normal at all? No, it's fucking insane, but it is happening.
So
I think.
it's like, do you think that everybody on the Ziegler level is like, people walk in and they're like, oh, it's Frank. New mask for him. Like they know each other. Like, do you think there's like, do you think there's a lot of
Richard.
Hey!
I think you were coming tonight.
Do you see the bond yield inverted? How about that? Have you met Mandy? She's great.
I did. I
Don't
was
give her
gonna
any
do this, but
speedballs though. She really.
I did have questions about the kind of interactions at giant ritual orgies.
Uh-huh.
Like, is there a cocktail hour?
Yeah. Is there any food?
There sure
it's
is.
also it's like it's 3:30 in the morning at that point, right?
Is there like an hour where they're passing around hors d'oeuvres, getting ready for the ritual, or is it just you come in? It's going.
It's always
going
funny to
right away.
imagine those things in the way that you're describing, where it's just like two guys talking at the newsstand about what the Knicks are up to this week, as opposed to this
Fucking John Starks. Can you believe it?
4-hour religious experience in which wealthy men fuck prostitutes in front of a guy in a red cloak. Like, it's just like, how long could you keep a straight face during an event like that in your life?
We got to wrap it up. Any other unanswerable questions?
Do you think Bill got Alan Cummings' character killed by saying that he told him all these things about Nick?
Jeez.
I think he might
It's
have.
dark.
I think he might have gotten
I can
killed.
actually have Andy ask Alan Cumming.
Please do.
And Nick, the musician, definitely died. Right?
He didn't make it back to Mrs. Nick. No, that's
Mrs. Nick
that's
didn't see him
answerable.
again.
That's
I
answerable.
don't think there was a Mrs. Nick.
That's dark.
Who won the movie? The Illuminati, because they killed Kubrick. They were the winners. That's who I have.
Wow. We have to
No.
delete this podcast immediately.
I have I have for who won the movie. I have it's got to be Kubrick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
for sure.
like
What a way to
there's
go
no
out.
way this movie ever should have worked in a million years. It's so fucking weird, and I don't really even still know what the plot was.
Doesn't matter. You know that
Doesn't
the
matter.
last contribution he ever made to cinema was having Nicole Kidman say that they had to fuck.
That was his last line.
That's with us forever.
The last line of a
Eat
Kubrick
shit,
movie
David
is
Chase.
fuck. That's a good way to go out. The Rewatchables 1999 is presented by Luminary Media. Don't forget, we have 5 more podcasts coming over the next couple weeks. We will see you back on this feed next week.